What up, guys? Welcome to Michigan Angler TV, and today we're doing a little something different. We're talking about some new tech that I've got. As you can see, I got a new rig here. I got rid of my big boat and my power drifter, and I went to this. This is an 1860 stealth sled. I'm pretty happy with it so far. I kind of wish I had the Mod V version instead of the flat bottom for getting out on the lakes a little bit more, but it works. You just have to take it slow when it gets rough. But anywho, I have a UHD2 9-inch Garmin up here on the bow. And then I have a Ultra 2 12 up there on the helm. And the cool thing that I've got new is this right here, which is the LiveScope. This is a GLF 10 mounted in my center console. I've got it run off its own battery, and then I have an lvs34 here. This is a Summit boat mount kit with a ram claw mount right there on the side, so I can put it. I've got this rail that goes around the side of my boat that's basically 360 degrees around the boat except for the nose cap right here, so I can put it anywhere I want in the boat. I have the two graphs linked together with Ethernet so I can see them both on here. I have the GT52 on the back of my boat right now, but I've got a GT56 in the box. I actually got this graph before that one, so that deucer came with this graph. Anyways, I have the better deucer that I'm putting on the boat here as soon as I get a chance to do it. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. I've been too busy fishing when I actually have time to do anything, not working. So that's going to happen pretty quickly here. The 9-inch up here is hooked up to the US2 in the bottom of the trolling motor. I'll probably really never use that for my application, but it is hooked up. I did buy the adapter and hook it up in case I want to do it. Like I said, they are Ethernet linked, so I can use the LiveScope on either screen. It's a little bit better on the 12 than it is on the 9 just because it's a bigger screen. Obviously, everybody's going to bigger screens. So if you can see, that up there is on a ram mount, so I don't know if I'm going to turn that around so I can see it from the bow, or I'm just going to use the 9. Like, come to think of it, the way it's set up in this boat, honestly, I probably should have put the 12 up here and put the 9 on the back deck back there. That probably would have made a little bit more sense, but maybe I'll add a third one, who knows. Might get a little rambunctious one day and go buy another one. Anywho, the main reason for today's video is you guys saw me post some stuff and talk about the Humminbirds in my old boat, and I had the MEGA Live. And I used the MEGA Live for a little over a year, and I liked it. It was good. It worked real good for vertical jigging, but beyond that, was it worth the money? Yes, it was worth the money. If you've got birds in your boat and you're dedicated to birds, you've already got the graphs, you want to buy the deucer, stick it on a pole or stick it on a trolling motor, it's definitely worth it. It definitely helps, but it's nothing compared to this here lvs34. Like, comparing the two, it's not even close, in all honesty. Like, I'll link my last two videos, my panfish video and my steelhead video that I did, where you can see we're using the LiveScope in both those videos. We're using it on the river to identify structure and identify fish in holes back behind logs and stuff, and then we're using it on the lake panfishing actually to see the bait, and I'll put a close-up of that in the video.
You can see right there, if you see my jig dropping down there, it's right there. The fish coming up to it, right underneath the jig. There's two fish on my bait right now, and I'm about to get plunked here in 2 seconds. And there you have it, fish on. And that is how it's done. Live scoping.
And I'm using like little itty bitty 32nd and 64th tungsten jigs. I'm talking tiny, and they show up on the screen no problem. There's 30, I mean, if you're 10, 15 foot from the boat, they're clear as day. If you get 30, 40, 50, 60 foot from the boat, you got to know what you're looking for a little bit. But the Mega Live wouldn't have even come close to doing that. Like last year, we were jigging kings with it down in the harbor in St. Joe, and like sometimes we were struggling to see 3/4 ounce blade baits on the Mega Live, and you had to be really, like you couldn't be off at all. You had to be perfect over the deucer. The biggest problem is, and I don't know the beam width on the Garmin compared to the Mega Live, and maybe it's because the way I have it set up in the boat, the mount, the way the boat is, it's closer to the water and everything than my old boat was. Maybe it's just easier for me to get into the beam of the deucer with this setup than my old setup. But for some reason, either in the way I had it set up in my power drifter or the way I had it set up in my big boat with the Mega Live, you just couldn't ever find your bait. I don't have that problem with the Garmin. Like, I can find anything. Like, you guys can see, like, if you go watch my Steelhead beatdown video, we were floating bobbers, and you can see each individual split shot in the split shot line float past the deucer. And they're not very big split shot. So to be able to do that 30 foot from the boat is insane. The perspective mode is something I've been testing out and trying a little bit here. I'm going to try it more when the bass start coming up to spawn in some of these local lakes, and I start targeting smallmouth on a fly rod, which is one of my favorite things to do in the spring, in the river and in the lakes. I love going up on the flats when those fish are shallow on docks with my fly rod and targeting smallmouth. It's one of my favorite spring things to do. It's just a blast. But anyways, I'm going to try to learn perspective mode on this so I can try and use that in perspective mode a little bit to find fish that are maybe further from the boat or maybe a little bit deeper or in darker water or whatever that I can't necessarily just sight fish like I'm accustomed to. But as far as comparing the two, the only thing I can say that I liked better about the Mega Live is I had a little bit better mount for it. That Geiger Tech mount was a little bit sturdier than this Summit system on a ram mount. This is super easy. It's super easy to manipulate. It's super easy to move around the boat. I like it for that. It's not super strong. So if you really are trying to move the boat, or you're trying to troll with it, or the river's really ripping, it can get to where it'll tip that pole back like that, and it'll screw your readings up just because, well, it's on a ram mount. So I might change that going forward. I might get a Kraken up here instead of this Altera. I do like my Alteras. I love my auto stow and deploy. I have one on this boat. I had one on the last boat. But I might get a Kraken and put the LVS34 on that, because mostly what I'm doing is river fishing. And if you can see, it might be out of frame there, but I got a power anchor on the boat, so I'm using the power anchor in the river more than I'm using the trolling motor. So what would be kind of cool is to have it on the trolling motor, to drop the trolling motor, use my remote, not even have the prop on, and just be able to look around remote controlled with my LiveScope, as opposed to having it on the pole here and having to reach out over the side of the boat and tip it to what I want to see. But it works like this for now. It was easy to set up, it was cheap, and it got me going, because I'm not really, like, I haven't seen a lot of guys in the river steelhead fishing using LiveScope, and it works fantastic to see back into the holes when you're anchored on them in the forward mode, or even we've been playing with that perspective mode, and like when you're up on the big man or you're on the PM or something in the winter and those fish are tucked in behind that cover, like you can come up, you can come up in beside the cover here, drop anchor, drop the LiveScope in the water in perspective mode, shine it right in there, and you can see perfectly where every run is. So you're not getting snagged, because you can see underwater what you can't see with your eyes, first and foremost. And secondly, you can see the fish sitting right in the trees. You can see them sitting there swimming in the current. It just works out really well. Anyways, back to comparing the two. As far as the Mega Live to the Garmin goes, like I said, there's really no comparison. The other than I liked the mount a little bit better, I also liked the what I would consider target separation on the Mega Live a little bit better. And what I mean by that is it has a slightly clearer screen. So the background of the screen is a little darker, and when you have a big fish, because it doesn't pick up small fish very well, it doesn't pick up bait very well, like gills are real hard to see on it. But when you have a big fish, you got a big salmon, big walleye, big steelhead, whatever, and on that screen, when it comes up off bottom, there's the background of that screen is very dark black, and it's very easy to see that fish and to see its outline, that it's clearly a fish. On the Garmin, it's a little bit more of a blob. The back of the screen isn't quite as dark, and it's a little bit harder to differentiate what might be fish and what might not be. It's a little bit different to get used to, but you're seeing so much more that once you get used to it, it's just so much better. I haven't used the down mode on this just because I haven't done any vertical jigging. Once I get over to the Detroit River and we start walleye fishing here in the next couple weeks, that's going to go in down mode. It's probably going to get moved up here to the front of the boat, or stay there if we're back there, just depending on where we're at in the boat. And we're going to use it for vertical jigging in down mode, and we'll see how that works. But anywho, I'm very, very happy with my Garmin setup, and unless forward-facing sonar is the future, it just is what it is. Like, everybody's going to it. If you're going to be competitive, you have to have it. If you're, when you're on the river and as busy as steelhead fishing has gotten, we just had the sports show here in West Michigan this week, and of that place, it used to be all bass stuff, with a little bit of walleye mixed in. Now it's 80% salmon and steelhead stuff with a little bit of walleye mixed in. So the industry in this area is moving to steelhead fishing. These boats are super popular, jet sleds are super popular, river boats are super popular. Everybody's into steelhead fishing. And when you go to the river on, a March afternoon when it's 60 degrees out, everybody wants to be there. And there's all these boats there. You've got to do something to differentiate yourself from the crowd. And what a lot of guys aren't doing, bada bing, bada boom. They're not doing that in the river. And I mean, some are. I'm not saying I haven't seen any. There's definitely some guys like me that haven't, but there's not a lot of boats on the river that have forward-facing sonar. And it's a huge tool that allows me to find fish where I wouldn't necessarily know that they'd be. I mean, yeah, you can drive down the river with your side imaging. You can mark a pot of fish, come back, anchor up on them, and fish them. That's what we've always done. But now I can see fish in the cover, in the logs, in the bullshit that I never would have known was there before. I would have never before known that those fish were there without that LVS34. So that's helped me a lot. It's definitely put a lot of fish in the boat. As you can see in the video, the Steelhead beatdown video that I just did, that's it. That our fish are responsible for that. If you go look on my TikTok, we've been catching a bunch of fish. There's all sorts of quick clips of floating a bobber right to a fish on the LiveScope and them nailing it. It just works. It just does. Among other things to differentiate yourself from what the crowd's doing on beads and jigs and whatever else. That's a whole nother story. That's not what we're talking about today. But anywho, I'm very happy with my Garmin's. Unless Humminbird really, really ups the game on forward-facing sonar, I won't go back. I don't like my side imaging on my Garmin as well as I did on my 12-inch Humminbird, but that's partly because I've got the GT52 on the boat, which is the cheap, basically high-resolution transducer. The GT56 is more like the big side imaging deucer from Humminbird. And this is more like the compact side imaging deucer you'd get with a Helix 7 SI or something. It's kind of not a mega deucer, if you will. So I'm going to be changing that, and I'm sure that's going to help matters, but it's just not. You don't see what you see. Yes, you can mark fish. Yes, you can see the shadows. Yes, it works. It's not what the Humminbird side imaging is. So that So that's a little different for me. I'm gonna have to get used to that, because before I was a huge side imaging guy. Like that was my game. Power corking fish, driving around, seeing them on side imaging, dropping a waypoint on them, coming back to them, fishing them with floats, fishing them with vertical jigging, like power corking, power jigging. Like that was my game. Snap jigging, like that's how I usually caught my fish. So I'm gonna have to change that up and implement the LiveScope a little bit more going forward. But other than that, I'm super happy with the Garmin's. I love the mapping on them. They have river mapping, which is super cool. Like you go in the river and all the holes are marked, all the runs are marked, all on Garmin's map. So that's super cool. Love that. Super happy with the mapping. 2D, I would say, is comparable. I think Lowrance has slightly better 2D than either of them, but it's comparable. Down imaging, I don't really use down imaging at all. So I don't really care, to be completely honest with you. As far as I'm concerned, down imaging is for guys who can't read 2D. So don't really care about that. But anyways, I don't see myself going back to Humminbird unless they really, really up their live game. And if they do that, I probably will switch back, because like I said, I did like the units a little bit better. As far as like just the physical unit and the controls and the screens, like these are a little bit more complicated. You got to go through more sub menus to get to what you want, as opposed to just opening settings on the Humminbird and having a big long list there like I'm used to. So that's a little different. But anywho, that's my setup. I love my Garmin's. I'm super happy with them. You know, being that forward-facing sonar as good as it is, I'm learning how to implement it into what I do a lot more than I did in the past, and I really think it's going to help me to put a lot more fish in the boat. So if you're contemplating the two, if you're committed to bird and you have a boat full of birds, get the Humminbird, because it is what it is. That's what I did in my last boat. But if you're setting up a new boat, 110%, go Garmin, get an lvs34, and it will put you on more fish. I guarantee it. Michigan Angler, out. Come out.